Yo, what's up? I'm Maxibon. I've been playing PoE 2 since 0.2, and originally started out in SSF, but moved to trade in 0.3 to kind of learn how to craft a bit better and just have more currency to work with. So this league I made 7 mod gloves for Prada's Abyssal Lich Twister, and today I remade these gloves you can see to kind of showcase exactly what I did to get here. Later in the week I'll make a video following up to show how I plan out a craft and the different resources available, but yeah. You might also notice that I started out with a pre-fractured +2 proj base, so I will just show you why. Yeah. 7 failed fractures and I'd had enough. Unfortunately, with fracturing, it's just how it goes sometimes. I got super unlucky here, but what can you do? If you don't have a lot of money to start with and you're cutting it close for the cost of the craft, I would recommend just starting out with buying a base that's already fractured, because you could miss 5 fractures in a row and have no money left. But yeah, the first step after you have the fracture is just chaos spamming. Essentially what you're looking for is either a tier 1 flat damage or tier 1 attack speed. Twister uses attacks to move, so the attack speed is mandatory for the gloves. And because you're scaling, I think it was about 800% increased proj speed with the Abyssal Lich snipers. You could use proj speed on the gloves, but I chose to go for gloves with triple flat. Once you have the first mod, if it's a prefix, you want to Sinistral Exaltation and Greater Exaltation Omen with a perfect exalt to try and hit 2 more flats on the prefix. If you hit 1 good flat and something else that can be whittled, try and whittle it to either a suffix or a prefix that you're looking for, so a 3rd flat. If you miss, like now, you just annul, or yeah, you pretty much just annul and have to start again from chaosing. There's a bit of a sunk cost fallacy where sometimes it can feel like you've already put a couple of omens and a couple of whittles into where you're at currently, but sometimes where you're at just can't be saved. You can try a 50-50 here with proj skills, but I miss. So you just got to annul, and well, there is the fizz gone, so back to chaos spamming. This can take quite a while. I think I started out with 800 chaos at the start of this craft, and I just cut out a lot of the chaos spamming to save you guys some time, because you would be here for a while. Now the reason I use perfect exalts instead of just greater is essentially you're spending a lot of Divine's worth of chaos just to get the first mod, so the relative value of using a perfect compared to an exalt is worthwhile in my opinion. So I've hit attack speed here, and instead I'm exalting the suffix, and I've got a second good suffix. Now initially I was looking for +2 projectiles, tier 1 attack speed, the essence crit bonus, and at least tier 2 crit chance, but surpassing is a reasonably good mod. It's not as good as crit chance in my opinion, but with the new jewels and currencies and crafting in the game this league, I think it's reasonably easy to get crit capped with Garukans especially, so I think surpassing is good enough. Just looking at some of the gloves on trade, the overlay I'm using is Exalt Exchange 2, there's a couple of other ones, I can't remember what they are, but I like it for just quick checking while I'm crafting to see if there's a combination of mods I'm not 100% sure about, to see if they have any potential for resale or for use. I like what I see there, so I'm going to decide to continue on. Now I greater exalt a prefix. You want to use greater because if you hit one of the desirable mods, then what you can do is desecrate a prefix, so when you do this next step, you have a 50-50 chance to keep the mod you want. That hasn't happened, so I'm just going to Essence of Hysteria and a Sinistral Crystallization to add the critical bonus and remove a prefix to finish my suffixes. Now with a craft like this where you're adding an essence halfway, I like to make sure one side of the item is done before I start working on the next. That's because the main method from here is whittling. And with whittling, you just really want to save as much money as possible. And if you accidentally leave a suffix open, you can brick that side of the item and go back to square one if you get unlucky on the annul. So now I'm just using the Sinistral Erasure. You don't need to use whittlings if you only have one prefix. I'm just going to check proj damage to see if I can settle on the craft here and make a bit of profit. Doesn't look like there's too many people making these gloves, so gonna make the decision to just continue on. Now, I didn't actually check before I started crafting, but I'm pretty sure, just on some napkin math, that using perfect chaos is relatively as cost efficient as using greater. So you can use either. I used a bit of both in this, so it's not super important, but it's something you need to decide for yourself how efficient you want to be with the craft. And you'd have to work that out at the time because the exchange rates are variable throughout the league, and you kind of just have to make that decision for yourself at the time. Now, I've got a couple more omens, couple more chaos. I'm essentially just looking for any tier 2 flat damage. The reason I'm not going to go for tier 1 is the budget I had for this craft was 600 divines, and if I wanted to go for a triple tier 1 and get unlucky, you could be spending north of 1,000 divine at this stage of the league, and that's just not really in my budget right now. So, looking for that first flat mod, and afterwards you'll just be exalting the second with a perfect exalt and continuing to whittle. Alright, run out of omens again. Getting a little rinsed right now. I think when I was looking at the odds, it's about a 1 in 30 to hit tier 2 or tier 1 flat damage with a greater chaos, and a 1 in 19 with a perfect chaos. So it could be about 150 divine to see that first flat, which is pretty expensive, but the gloves that we're trying to make, you probably won't need an upgrade for the rest of the league. Alright, tier 2 fizz, perfect exalt. Oh, T1 lightning, that's huge. Okay, now the craft is pretty much done. You cannot brick it here unless you make a mistake. So what this last step is just desecrating with ancient ribs and continuing on until we get a third flat damage. Now, you could settle on tier 2. Tier 3 I think is a little bit weak, but that's just my opinion. The good thing about this step of the craft is you can stop at whatever point and come back to the craft later if you're running low on currency. I think because we settled on not getting crit chance on the suffix and gone for surpassing, and also having tier 2 fizz flat instead of tier 1, I think the gloves wouldn't have as much value with the tier 2 flat roll as they would with tier 1, tier 1, tier 2. So I think we're gonna just keep going until we hit tier 1. Just double checking the gloves, make sure I have everything. Alright, so off to the Well of Souls, which is the area you unlock in Act 2. I think the Well of Souls is my favorite crafting addition to Path of Exile 2. I've played a little bit of PoE 1 and it was a little overwhelming. I'm new to both games, but I've spent a lot more time in PoE 2. Now, 18 to 25 cold damage I think is tier 2. Yep, so we're gonna reroll that. That would be an amazing place to settle if you're looking to profit craft, but I'm making these on commission, so the guy would like 2 tier 1 flats, so that's what he's getting. Omen of Lights are quite expensive at the moment, so I would personally recommend stopping there, but we keep going. Now the weights for gloves are at tier 1, 400 for fizz, and half the weight for each of the elemental rolls. So if you have 2 elemental flat damages and you're trying to desecrate for the fizz, you're going to have a lot of an easier time than if you have fizz already on there. It kind of sucks that we have tier 2 and we're not seeing any flats, but just got to keep going. Yeah, it's looking like stopping at the cold damage would have been very, very profitable, but just got to keep going. We've made that choice. Getting rinsed. Oh my god. I'm out of echoes. So far, 70 div deep on desecrating. Haven't seen a tier 1. I think that's slightly under 8, but like I said, we have the physical damage already on the gloves, and it has double the weight, so can't really expect too much. Getting a little bit low on divines, so if this doesn't work, we'll have to make a little bit of currency mapping and come back, which wouldn't be ideal. I'm trying to make this video short for you guys, but yeah. 10 to 16, not enough. Ooh, 21 to 33, that is tier 1 for sure. Alright. So that is the gloves. Just put them in the currency tab. Alright, tier 2, tier 1, and pretty nice suffixes. So that's the gloves, and thank you for watching.